ladies and gentlemen, it is the start of the month, and as you can imagine, there's been some news that has come out. And that news is, of course, the Gacha Revenue Monthly PvP report. And everybody loves using this as an opportunity to talk some shit, spread even more misinfo than what's currently in the chart, and of course, right, begin some discussions about what games are gonna EOS, who's messing up, and of course, who's on top. Because when we're working with estimated mobile projections, it's never telling the whole story. A lot of these games are a lot better on the PC. A lot of these games have stores on things like PlayStation as well as Steam. And you all gotta remember, this is just one piece of the pie. But there are some nuggets of insight we're going to be able to grab from it, because these are a general guideline, but never the full picture. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get right on into it? And first things first, right? We got to talk about the elephant in the room, because a lot of people, they'll look at these numbers, they'll see the projections on Twitter or social media, and they'll start talking about how Wuthering Waves, which you're seeing over here, right under my face, that one's going to EOS, right? Seeing a relatively steep drop off in these estimations, and well, it's below 50%. And the thing is, some people might panic. Some people might look at this, and the first thing that I have to tell everybody over here off of the bat is that this number is and has been actively manipulated for the past probably 4, 5, maybe even 6 months. And there's demonstrable proof of that. So you gotta take all of WuWa's numbers with a grain of salt, specifically for this one reason. This site and this database is curated by one person, and that person that curates it is Trixie. And so you got to keep in mind that Trixie is an active viewer and active community member of somebody called Gateo. And Gateo is somebody that is a self-professed Kuro Games hater, Hada lover, NTE booster. And they have a literal track record going back up to 3 months ago, telling Trixie, the owner of that Gacha Revenue website and the compiler of this database, to actively bump WuWa down. So let's just get a little bit of proof of that heading on into it before we tee up that discussion for WuWa. Oh, this guy's also incredibly racist.
He called me racist, which, let's be real here. I'm Chinese, okay? That's enough said about that statement, okay? I'm not denying it, okay?
I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if it's related, though.
4 and 6 right now. And why is this 7 then? See, why is there extra 1 mil on the website? Huh? Why is there an extra 1 mil? What did you cook? Why did you add 1 mil to Wuthering Waves?
And you want to know what the end result was of that? I've got an incognito tab open over here because that's the only way I can access the website. So this is what the revenue was actually looking like prior to Gateo's statement, right? You can see over here 3 consecutive months of iOS and Android revenue in CN for Wuthering Waves being exactly the same. Gateo comes in from the top rope, demands that the website curator reduces the revenue. And would you look at that? We bump it down by a cool 100K for fun. We just bump it down for fun, even though in prior records on 05, it was the same. But hey, we gotta add some flavor over here, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, we gotta add some active manipulation into the mix. Why not? And the situation is that when you know that that's the sort of relationship that's going on behind the scenes, you have an active Wuthering Waves hater who is on the record, right, talking shit about the game at every single opportunity, despite, you know, not really having the widest audience. He still does have a fair amount of sway because he has a direct line to whoever runs this website and can tell them to do whatever he wants and can paint whatever narrative he would like. And the thing is, well, it's really easy to manipulate these numbers, but you can't just straight up lie about them too much, right? That's why we saw some big bumps up over here on the 6th with like the banners of Cartithia, Zani, so on and so forth, because those characters were so wildly popular, I don't think they could even think about actively lying about them over here. But now that they're gone and we're moving on to some other banners, I'm not saying that they did it, but the evidence is there that it's been done in the past. And so, just keep that in mind. there might be a little bit of cookery. There might be a little bit of skepticism to talk about when you're seeing these initial results. But with that in mind, let's just go ahead and start talking about them. Right? Because I think one thing that a lot of WuWa players should realize, if they haven't figured it out by now, is that the last 2 banners that this game has had has been some of the most, I don't want to say unpullable, but one of the most unnecessary set of banners that this game has likely ever had. So let's talk a little bit over here about the most recent banner for Lova. This unit is perhaps the furthest from a must pull I've ever seen. She is perhaps the most unnecessary unit that any person ever needs to have on their account. And the reasoning is quite simple over here. She's a Havoc DPS that works with 2 limited other Havoc units. These 2 are also some of the most unnecessary units in the game. She also fulfills a role, Havoc main DPS, that has also been filled by one of the most popular units that's ever released, and also by a free-to-play one that everybody gets for free. The end result is that, yes, she might have had some great story integration, but believe me when I say this, I don't think a lot of people have pulled her. You can even look up the guides on YouTube as well. She has one of the lowest performing views when it comes to guides as well. It's kind of just the realization that a lot of players have. She already steps on the toes of a lot of limited units that have previously been released. And the end result is, well, you're only really pulling her if you're paying money or you're like a super new player. And the reality is, when it comes to this game, meta is a lot more important than waifu. And I think this is kind of like the proof over here, is that I don't think a lot of people are actively looking for this unit. There's not a lot of people actively talking about her. And I think people already have what they need, and she adds nothing to their account. And let's not forget the fact that this was her best in slot teammate. So I think that was like a barrier of its own. Now, let's move on to the next unit, or really, the unit that was prior to for Lova, and this is Lupa. She also is, without a doubt, one of the most unnecessary units that has ever released in this game. Unless you are using her on a triple fusion team, where the requirement is that you essentially have Brant if you're going to play triple fusion, because he's the only fusion sustained in the game. Not a lot of people pulled him because he has a penis, and so the end result is that Lupa herself wasn't really that desirable for a lot of players either. And when the situation is that she kind of is tied to the hip to Brant to play her premium team, and she kind of is like a fusion only support, and then her role is like a slightly better Sanhua for Encore if you're not using her as a fusion support. Well, you need a lot of prerequisites to make this character not like somewhat useless on your account, and that alone makes her a very low value pull. You're beginning to see what I'm talking about over here, right? Meta over waifu. Cartithia was just like a complete unit, right? Or, you know, like a complete unit, like a DPS that just goes in, absolutely trucks some stuff, changes the game. These guys give you a different way to play the game, but aren't really like standouts by themselves, and have way more reliance, right, on having limited teammates to reach their full potential. She, ironically enough, only needs 1. These guys actually kind of need 2. So that's even a bigger barrier to what's going on. So I think that, you know, when it comes to these numbers, right, obviously, we just went through the whole context of a lot of it is made up, right? A lot of it isn't real. It's actively manipulated behind the scenes, but I think we still do need to derive some insight from the results that we're seeing over here, because I think a lot of people can recognize where I'm coming from, right? A lot of people can recognize what exactly I'm talking about over here when it comes to the use cases of these units. Because guys, I'm going to be making a pull value tier list. I'm going to be making like a 5-star worth, signature weapon value, all of that. Bit of a spoiler warning. These 2 are at the bottom. These 2 are straight up at the bottom. If you're a free-to-play, you're new to the game, I would tell you to stay as far away as possible, as far away as you can possibly conceive from these 2 units because of how specialized they are. They're made, and this is a weird thing to say in a gacha game, they're made for like 20% of players. And when you have all that context, when you have all that glue, when you know all the prerequisites these units have, in a sense, to, you know, make them appealing as a gacha pull, I think it makes sense that a lot of people didn't pull on them. But with that in mind, I think that these numbers are getting juiced downward still. I know we provide all the context for why they're lower. I still think they're getting juiced because this guy has that much of a vendetta against a game. You might say that I'm a Hoyo hater. You guys might say that I'm a Premier Hoyo shill. I don't know if I've got ahead and I've made a website specifically so that I can spread misinformation about a game because I don't like it. And that's basically what this dude has done over here for WuWa. And thankfully enough, there is a very, very, very beautiful track record of it happening in real time. So yeah, that'll be that for the Wuthering Waves section. Now let's talk a little bit more about some of the other games in the space because, well, we can derive those same insights too. So we got Zenless Zone Zero up on top of WuWa, and we all know from prior revenue lists, one thing Gateo really likes to ensure is that ZZZ is above WuWa. I think, wait, does somebody have the clip of that? Somebody has that clip where Gateo was like, one thing that we need to make sure happens is that ZZZ is above WuWa. There's a clip of that somewhere. It's floating around. Let me find it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we found it. It took a while, and while we didn't find the original source of it, we do have the excerpt of it from one of my past videos. So let's go ahead and hear it one more time.
Really, revenue PvP post, ZZZ is still going to be on top of Wuthering Waves.
Oh, yeah?
I don't see how it isn't.
Oh, yeah?
Because WuWa won't get the last few days. The anniversary revenue won't be there on day one.
So he's been on the record, and there are Discord messages as well of him saying, him and his community saying, we gotta make sure that ZZZ is actually on top. So with that in mind, let's get back into these actual numbers. So when it comes to ZZZ, I think one of the biggest sort of realizations that a lot of people have had is that 2.0 was, without a doubt, one of the most disappointing updates that I think the gacha space has ever had. It really did seem like it was like, you know, a combination of an anniversary, a combination of, you know, a new version update too. It set really, really high expectations and then proceeded to meet pretty much none of them. The open world was bad. The characters are boring. The second half character especially was like extremely boring. And then the story was highly overrated and honestly, at its worst definition, actually trash. Complete drop in storytelling quality, drop in story quality overall compared to prior updates of the game. And it genuinely seems like, at least in my opinion, the game is going down like the wrong path. And according to these numbers, right, that seems to be following too. Because right now, they're in version 2.1 with one of like the most low scope, just like, I don't want to say low effort, but misguided story quests that the game has ever had, where they're lumping in and making story quests just character quests instead. And they're forcing the runtime of the character stories into the main story. And the end result is that I don't think that the game itself is particularly on the right track, especially following one of the biggest updates and like the biggest hype moments, like the next chapter that it was supposed to have. I personally think that the game's gonna have another soft relaunch. It has already had two. I think the third one is coming up really, really, really soon. The devs need to figure something out, and it can't just be making every new unit way stronger than the prior one that just got released, because that's kind of like the track record that they have, especially for releases like Miyabi, Yizhuan, Astro Yao, and of course, the newest one, Yazuha. And keep that in mind, these are the projections. With Yazuha, the newest broken unit, the newest meta broken must-pull unit on banner. Like, she is like the third must-pull that's in the game. Now, let's go ahead, start moving up. There are like a couple of other games on here. We don't really focus on those. We're mainly talking about the big four. So let's just go ahead, let's keep going. The next one up is going to be Genshin Impact in the third spot with a bit of a steep drop, close to 50% compared to some of the prior months. And I just gotta say over here, it's like Genshin is Genshin. I don't think that the game can ever die. This is like asking somebody who grew up eating rice to tell them to stop eating rice. Because I think for a lot of people, Genshin Impact has been the game, like the comfort game, almost like a secondary source of therapy for a lot of people traumatized from the COVID. And right now, it's like having a glass of chocolate milk before bed for some people and their bank account. I don't know what the plans are for this company moving forward, but from the previews that I've seen of version 6.0, and the reality of a Nephis kit over here, instead of fixing the game, instead of adding new mechanics to freshen it up over 5 years for free to everybody, the new mechanics, the fixes to the game, the updates are essentially pay to update, where if you want the update to Genshin Impact, you're gonna have to pull the newest Nodcry character. You want the update to elemental reactions like Electrocharge, you're gonna have to pull a Nepha. You want the upgrade to Bloom that has gotten power crept. Bloom is pretty much unplayable nowadays. Make sure that you pull the newest Dendro or whatever, the little mommy milker Dendro lady that's coming out. You gotta make sure you pull her too. And then they're gonna have the lunar melt, the lunar vaporize, the lunar crystallize. And so all these new lunar reactions are essentially the fix to Genshin's elemental system, right? They're the fix to the reactions. They're what they should be, but to play them in the new version that the devs are clearly intending to be the new version, well, you gotta lock down a team slot for the newest unit, and you gotta pull them. So yeah, $300, $400 per element. Oh wait, it's actually more. It's around $800 per element, because you're gonna have to pull their weapon too, because the new character's weapon, like a Nepha's weapon, directly buffs the new reaction that they're gonna be coming out with. So it's an $800 deal for each reaction that's gonna be coming out. And so do keep that in mind, right? It's not just $800 per element, it's $800 per reaction. And so we still got Lunar Superconduct, Lunar, like you gotta think about each element reacts with a different one, right? And does all these different things. You gotta keep that in mind. That's how Hoyoverse is, in my opinion, going to be juicing some of those revenue numbers in the future. Guys, let's just be entirely honest. They are nickel and diming you for everything that you have at this point. And that's why I'm saying this game is like the guilty pleasure for people. Because when quality of life updates are being shipped out in $800 chunks at a time, most people would be like, damn, these developers don't respect the players at all. I'm gonna stop playing the fucking game. But they do it. The quality of life fixes are $800 because you need the character and the weapon. And people are still spending on this game. This is like cigarettes, but the cigarettes don't even make you feel good. You know they're killing you, and they don't even make you feel good at the same time, but you still keep smoking them. That is what it feels like for Genshin players to continue spending on this game. A loss on both sides. But that's what mental illness from COVID ends up doing to a person. Now, let's talk about another brand of mental illness over here when it comes to gacha revenue, and that one is going to be Honkai Star Rail. Because boy, oh boy, I'm not gonna lie, revenue getting close to quintupling, knowing that the Fate collab in version 3.4 was one of the most disappointing collabs and disappointing updates that the gacha space has ever seen, perhaps even more disappointing than ZZZ 2.0, is wild. And I think that, again, if these projections are true, I think that this is one of the worst signs that the gacha space can literally receive. And I hope that these are inflated to heavens. I hope these are inflated so high that even heaven can feel it. Sorry, that was the lamest reference ever. That was the lamest fucking reference ever. Because what this will show developers at Hoyoverse and possibly developers in other areas of the space is that low effort, cash grab, nonsense, garbage collabs will sell. Who cares as long as you bring the IPs in? Who cares if you bastardize their characterization, make it not even related to the IP at all, make it one of the biggest, worthless, most, just garbage slogs in the history of gacha gaming? You'll still sell as long as you're a big name like Hoyoverse. And you wanna know what I think in the future? There's gonna be even less effort put into future collabs. I wouldn't even be surprised if future collabs, you don't even have a story. It's just the units and their fucking tutorial and their light cone. I would not be surprised if that's what the future collabs are, because I guess it doesn't fucking matter what the other stuff that you're doing. They'll cook it for 2 years this time, and they'll release just like one unit. The reputation for collabs in this space has taken a disgusting amount of damage because of what just happened in 3.4, and to see a company rewarded for one of the laziest efforts that the space has ever seen, I think it should leave a feeling of disgust, a taste of just absolute dissatisfaction in a lot of people's mouths. And this is the thing. If their collab was good, if the fake collab was awesome, I would actually be happy to see these numbers, because then we could make the sort of rationalization. The company put out a quality product and then they made a lot of money in turn, right? That's something that you generally like to see. But in this situation, one company that's known for their laziness, that's known for cutting corners, that's known for fucking over players for the longest amount of time, and in a game like Honkai Star Rail, with the power creep, the HP inflation, the global passives, all of that, the new pay-to-win endgame that's coming out, to see a company that's fucking up all of these things, and then on top of it, making the laziest collab the space has ever seen, and then they're getting rewarded on top of that, according to these projections, oh boy, that's just... Sometimes it really does make you think, are gacha players stupid? And the answer to that question is probably yes, because if you're still spending money on Honkai Star Rail, knowing that every character has a shelf life of about 3 months, and it takes thousands of dollars to keep up with the endgame and the new releases, you might actually just be legitimately stupid. But that's just my take. So there are some disclaimers, right? There are some realizations that we do need to have that you have to dig a little bit to find out when it comes to the numbers on these lists. Because apparently, from the grapevine, I've heard that these numbers are actually nerfed a little bit, and they all should actually be higher than what they are. And to do that, and to find out that information, ladies and gentlemen, you might have to pat me on the back a little bit. I had to dive through this comment section on the r/Gacha Gaming subreddit. And as you can imagine, on the r/Gacha Gaming subreddit, this has always some of the worst comments ever. And so let's just go ahead, jump down. You can already see I've hidden some of the comments already. And now let's talk about that one stipulation. So I found it out from this comment over here. The CN debuff in revenue PvP really affected most of the CN games here. Wait, what happened? Sensor Tower changed the way they estimate CN revenue, so all games that have a significant CN side revenue have lower numbers. And so Sensor Tower is the place where these people curating this website get their quote-unquote numbers. That is just something to keep in mind. Apparently, everything that you're seeing up here in CN is actually supposed to be higher. You can take my word for it. You can take the person who wrote that comment's word for it. But with that one upvoted to the top, it could just be straight up misinformation as a whole. That's, I guess, generally the take that they're going with. And I'm sure there might be an official Sensor Tower article out there somewhere that can confirm those thoughts. But that's really kind of like the main thing. That's like the main takeaway. Now, with those disclaimers over, I think it's time for us to finally have like the last bit of final takeaways when it comes to this chart. And I think the main thing is, guys, this is entirely 1000% only mobile revenue. And the thing is, when it comes to these games, you're likely making your purchases, you're likely making your buys on the platform that you play it the most. And some of these games are a little bit simpler than others. Some of these games are kind of for babies, or some of these games can be played by babies. The games I'm talking about, right, are the Honkai Star Rails and the Genshin Impacts, right? These are very easy games, especially if you pull the newest units, and you can play them pretty easily on mobile. But Wuthering Waves and ZZZ, I think ZZZ is without a doubt the worst one on mobile, but Wuthering Waves isn't that far behind it. And the realization that, again, I think a lot of people have come to, but if you haven't yet, now's the time. A lot of people are buying top-ups in these games on things like the Steam store, the PC client, or the PSN store, or whatever other platform it's on that's not a fucking phone. Because I don't play Wuthering Waves on my phone. I don't even do dailies on my phone, right? Because I don't like how the game feels on mobile. And I'm sure there are plenty of people like me, even though they could be. But games like HSR, games like Genshin, they're so simple, or their combat is so like basic and bare bones, that going ahead and playing it on mobile is something that a lot more people can do, right? And for Genshin in particular, it has a highly established, massive player base of mobile players because of what went on during COVID. And Genshin is a way less resource intensive game. I'm also saying Genshin looks like shit compared to games nowadays. ZZZ and WuWa both actually run like shit on older devices. And believe me, there are a lot of utilitarians out there who have a smartphone from like 2021 because they found no reason to replace it. And they just don't really run games like WuWa or ZZZ that well. But they have a PS4 or they have a PC at home, so they just play the games there. And that's the thing. Higher technical requirements, no technical requirements, and no gameplay limitations. And when these numbers are strictly, only, just mobile revenue, ladies and gentlemen, they can never tell the full story. But what does tell the full story is this tweet from the #1 Kurobot himself, Mr. Gacha Smack, in response to somebody saying that WuWa is dead. He comes in and he drops this banger. As of late 2024, Kuro Games had an estimated market value of 1.7 billion, making it among the top 1,000 most valuable private companies globally. Great job, Gacha Smack. I love the Pistons 0-4 defense that you're playing over here, Bucko. You're absolutely cooking these noobs on Twitter. Keep it up, man. Keep it up, man. I'm just trying to be a little bit more like you, man. But yeah, that's that, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully we've been able to approach it from a lot of angles. I know at the end of the day, right, we always talk about how like fake these numbers are, how not real, but there still are some nuggets of insight that you're going to be able to derive. And I think we've had some pretty helpful, some pretty fruitful discussions regarding the matter. And, you know, possibly, hopefully, maybe you learned a thing or two about how these charts, numbers, and of course, manipulation by racist people. Hopefully you all know a little bit more about how that works. Let me know what you all think. Peace.